Whether you're a Star Wars fan or somebody who has just been a passerby observer of the franchise, you'll know that the past couple of years have not been kind to the fandom. Beginning with the sequels and the division and kind of just like a lot of hate that they dredged up, there were many people that were blamed, and probably the most notable was Kathleen Kennedy. She was the president of Star Wars and had a big hand and role in the sequels, and she was blamed for their failure for the most part. Obviously, there were other people. Skip to the current day, she's no longer the president. And now we have somebody new, Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni has been a giant Star Wars fan his entire life. He dressed up as Plo Koon to go to the opening of The Revenge of the Sith, and he has been sort of a protege of George Lucas. He was the face of the Star Wars, the Clone Wars TV show, as the director and supervising director. And whether you watched the show or not, I did growing up as a kid, it was a very big deal in the Star Wars community, as it had a lot of commercial success and it did a lot to expand on a era that we didn't know much about. It introduced new characters, gave them solid roles. Nothing was overreaching. Characters like Ahsoka, who helped build up other characters like Anakin, which, of course, if you've seen the prequel trilogy, his growth is very sporadic. Shout out George Lucas writing. But it helps grow characters like that we love. It introduces new characters that we grow to love, like Captain Rex, and other characters that we already knew, like Commander Cody. We learn more about them, we grow closer to them, and we enjoy these things, right? Because of that, a lot of people, including George Lucas himself, including me, believed that Dave Filoni was somebody who should have a bigger role in Lucasfilm and Star Wars in general, right? As we saw the sequel trilogy kind of melt apart and become this disaster. I won't get into it, but at episode 8, a lot of people didn't. You either liked it or you didn't, right? And that's something of its own. But episode 9 was a complete and utter disaster with no taste for scale, no taste for story, and just an outright failure. And because of that, a lot of people, including myself, felt that there needed to be a change. And the people at Disney felt the same. Enter Dave Filoni, as he proceeded to get multiple promotions, eventually becoming the president of Lucasfilm. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm having concerns, or other people are having concerns about Dave Filoni. Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Big part of Filoni's ascension to the very top was his role in The Mandalorian. Now, The Mandalorian was created by Jon Favreau, but worked on with Dave Filoni. Now, The Mandalorian was a big success. It was fresh, new, a brand new character, something different, like a western. It was just, Mando. He's a badass, right? Like the Mandalorian helmet. That's just it. Like, we love that. But expanding from Mando is kind of where the issues dredge up. There were 2 directly connected series to Mandalorian. The Mandalorian, I mean. Ahsoka and the Book of Boba Fett. So we'll start with the Book of Boba Fett. The Book of Boba Fett was a show, obviously, about Boba Fett escaping the Sarlacc pit. I personally would have enjoyed something actually bounty hunting, but besides that, the show itself was, generally speaking, mediocre. Of course, people have different tastes, and some people enjoyed it more than others, but the story left a lot to be desired. It starts out by giving a unique story about Boba's connection to the Tusken Raider tribes on Tatooine, and personally, I love that part of the story. I really did. And preceding that, Boba tries to take over Jabba's old territory. I don't want to disparage any of the actors here, because they all did great in their actual acting, but the issue is, and this issue will return, we're so used to seeing these characters as something that when we see them actually fight and they look very slow, it is a little jarring. We'll get to that a lot more in Ahsoka, But when he gets into a fight with Cad Bane, now if you haven't watched the Clone Wars TV show, there's a character called Cad Bane, and he is, and I would say, the best bounty hunter out there. He's ruthless, he's fast, he's strong, he has a bunch of gadgets, and he's hired by the Hutts to take down Boba. Now, here's the thing. I don't mind this as a isolated thing, right? Bringing back Cad Bane. It could have been anyone, but they chose Cad Bane. Okay. Spoiler alert, again, Boba defeats Cad Bane. And again, even if I don't respect or like how it was done, this in isolation is fine. But bringing back Cad isn't like its own thing. It's a pattern of behavior by Dave Filoni influenced or directed shows. And you see what I mean. So let's get to Ahsoka, right? Ahsoka, okay, I'm gonna attack even just the premise of the show, and maybe this is just a little, maybe this won't resonate because maybe it's just a me thing. But I personally felt Ahsoka's story had been told already with Rebels and her fight with Vader. I think it should have been left there because it was a perfect ending. It was emotional, it was cool. We saw her growth with Ezra and her helping the rebellion. But that would have been a perfect send-off for her, and kind of cheesing her back in to the universe and stretching her character from what it was supposed to be. It's fine, right? Characters grow, they change, but it's so thin. You're not creating a web of intricate and unique events and characters. This is becoming more of a ball of yarn, just a bunch of different colored strings bundled together. Because now Ahsoka lives, she doesn't die with Vader, but where is she for this event? Where is she for that event? Where is she for this? You have to bend and twist these things. So these characters they were so pivotal the entire time. But because they're capped by the original trilogy, but they're just not there, right? And this is fine. Like, obviously we have great projects like Rogue One that does this, but Rogue One, all the characters die. It's a limitation of the future already being set, right? And that is a fact for all of Star Wars, from the original trilogy to the prequel trilogy to the sequel trilogy now that caps even further in the future, which I'll get to later. Now, okay, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but back to Ahsoka, right? There is no reason for Ahsoka to be here. If you want to tell the Thrawn story, you can pick someone else. You don't have to have Ahsoka. There are connections in Rebels with Ezra and all that, but just it doesn't have to be Ahsoka again. We need something new. We need fresh blood. We need characters we can get attached to. Obviously, all the Rebel crew, not all of them, but they return. And we see them again. And it's just like, really? Again? Like, we need to move on. Dave needs to move on. I know he created Ahsoka and he's very attached, but one of the beauty of creating things is letting them end. Okay, and I think it's gone too far. Pulling characters from the past for nostalgia or because, they fit here, but they're not exactly like, it's kind of weird to have them here, but doing it anyways isn't healthy. It isn't good. We're losing the opportunity to introduce new people and new things. Star Wars, the sequel trilogy failed epically, and it did a lot of damage to what Star Wars can do now, because eventually everything between the Return of the Jedi needs to end at The Force Awakens, and The Force Awakens did not give Star Wars much to go off of. And there's no gap between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, so there's really nothing to do there. And then you have The Rise of Skywalker, which is just a dumpster fire, and then I mean an atrocity to any sort of good writing. So he has a hard job. I'm not here to act like it's easy. Just go to the future and make a bunch of nice characters that people love. Obviously, it's hard, right? But that's the job he has now. And he did it with Ahsoka. Ahsoka is a great character. I loved her in Clone Wars. I loved how she matured. I love how different she was in Rebels. Almost a mentor. But we just didn't need to see her again. And a lot of these characters we did not need to see again. Their story ended. Is this always a bad thing? No. Mandalorian Season 3 also kind of does this with Bo-Katan. I think it's done a little bit better. Or not a lot, okay, a lot bit better than the other instances. But I still think it's a bit too much. Having Bo-Katan and having the Night Owls and all that in there is fine, right? But this is the Mandalorian. There's no reason to not have him, somebody who we've seen grow, not exactly past the watch, but understanding of other Mandalorians and what it should truly be. And then we give it right back to Bo-Katan. I understand that she was a pretty vital character in all the Mandalorian arcs in the Clone Wars trilogy, but she can be there, she can help. But it's pretty obvious that Mando should have been the one to lead. It's not his character, it's not this. But let's be real, that whole Western style of Season 1 and for most part Season 2 is gone. That's not really what he is anymore. We don't see him being a bounty hunter. We don't see him doing any type of those things anymore. He's just a soldier now. He's becoming there's no more frame to his character. It's just a putty that they shape to whatever story needs. The most concerning thing to me, however, is something completely different. The show Andor. If you've seen the show Andor, there's gonna be a lot of spoilers. If you haven't, you should really watch it if you like Star Wars. Or even if you don't need to know anything about Star Wars to watch this show. And that's the thing. Andor is a rare sighting of amazing writing with amazing execution. Okay, Andor in Star Wars, I mean, and generally speaking, but Star Wars specifically. Andor tells a story with characters we somewhat know. Obviously, we've seen Cassian in Rogue One. We've seen Mon Mothma before. We've seen a bunch of different characters before, but we don't really know too much about their stories. Right? They're not overdone. The stories aren't over because they've never been told. All right, and we see the dark side of the Empire. It makes the Empire go from this generic evil to this people you actually hate. The people that you see why everybody just lived in fear and cowered. It wasn't just the Emperor and Vader anymore. You could see the lower levels of everyday life and how that would affect everyone. Now, what did this have to do with Dave Filoni? Well, nothing. But that's exactly it. He had no input at all in Andor. And it was actually a Kathleen Kennedy project. And what this tells me is a little bit scary because, like I said, the biggest piece of work, at least live action work, that Dave Filoni has done, or not done, but helped work on, is The Mandalorian. And The Mandalorian, the first 2 seasons are great. But like I said, Season 3, and I'm not going to mention the movie, but the movie's not good. Not great. It is okay. Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka. These are, in comparison to Andor and the level of storytelling, they're on different stratospheres. It's insane how good Andor is compared to what Mando becomes. So, can Dave Filoni save Star Wars? He can. We've seen it in the past with the Clone Wars TV show, with Maul, which kind of is a weird thing where he does really well with animated shows and is struggling pretty hard with live action. Dave needs to hire great directors to make great films. He needs to hire creative writers to write great stories. Obviously, he is there to deny and approve and maybe set guardrails for those directors, but they need to do it because they are the creatives. He is now the president of Lucasfilms. He needs to be focused on keeping these projects on track, keeping them within their like their self-contained stories or maybe trilogies, whatever it is, and making sure it fits into Star Wars. But he should not be making all these creative decisions. He should not be writing entire shows like Ahsoka anymore. He needs to let it go. Skip 100 years, skip 500 years. Do what you need to do to set the table clear and let people who are good at their jobs, proven, maybe not proven, maybe who knows, maybe you can gamble on a director or two or a writer or two, right? But let people who are great at their jobs be great. Do your job at taking care of the overall idea of Star Wars, because as of right now, Star Wars is falling into just being mediocre slop, and that's kind of just the reality. The last 3 movies, not counting The Mandalorian, you can throw it in there if you want even, have been mediocre at best, tragic and franchise destroying at worst, and divisive. That's kind of what it is, and to push it forward you need to be brave. And with Star Wars fans, you're gonna get a lot of hate if it doesn't work out, but that's the trick of the trade, right? It's entertainment. It either flies or it flops. In terms of my opinion, I think he can do it. I do think he can do it. He just needs to grow past what he's already done.